There is no consensus as to the true nature of reality. Early postulates had seen moisture, ether, and even numbers being ascribed as the rudiments responsible for reality's true nature. Different schools of thought have developed ever since, the common disagreements between them as to whether there are two principles that control reality, i.e. matter and the mind, soul, or if it's only one of these principles in existence. Socrates, I believe, is the first to give a description of reality which appears susceptible to an experiment. His ideas find expression in Ortega y Gasset's coinage, ensemble of perspectives. Take, for instance, a group of people looking at a boat at the same time. They would not see exactly the same shade of color. This is due to the disturbance of light on the surface of the boat and relativity of the positions from which they view the boat. If, however, the different views of the group could be gathered together, it might be possible to attain a description which seems closest to the true boat, hence closer to reality. That is the idea of the ensemble of perspectives. In the recent decade, however, a new hypothesis by cognitive psychologist Donald Hoffman, measured by scientific experiments, threatens to discredit these former ideas. What Donald Hoffman's theory is all about and how it astonishingly shares some ideas with a certain philosophical teaching important to an ancient revered religion will be addressed here. Donald Hoffman termed his idea conscious realism. In some ways, conscious realism bears an echo of Bishop George Berkeley's postulation that whatever we perceive as reality is a dependent construct of our consciousness. Hoffman's theory distances itself from Berkeley, however, in that it does not seek to prove that the ultimate reality is the mind of God. Conscious realism takes the stand that our perceived reality is a collective delusion set upon us by evolution as a hack to ensure our survival. The lab experiments undertaken by he and his team involved a mathematical model of simulating artificial evolutionary game worlds, with random organisms being placed in these artificial worlds possessing three traits: seeing all of reality, some of reality, and none of reality, just fitness. He states that fitness is a key variable of evolution. The results found that the organisms seeing no reality but fitness alone showcased high rates of survival, while those who tended to see all of reality veered toward extinction as they lacked the necessary cues for survival. He further drew the analogy of the computer desktop and the app interfaces, in which the physical objects we believe react to our sense experience are the app interfaces, and the computer desktop is synonymous with space-time. He alleges that evolution ditches the complex reality in favor of more adaptable behavior that will aid survival. The essence of Hoffman's argument can be summarized in Anil Seth's idea of humans experiencing controlled hallucinations, which seem to be reality. They both agree that it's necessary for our survival. It's interesting to note that Hoffman's hypothesis does have a brief convergence with a certain philosophical teaching of the Advaita, non-dualists, school of Vedanta of the Hindu sect. Both parties strongly maintain that the reality we experience, space-time, is an illusion, Maya, and a construct of our consciousness. It's also agreed that the illusion is born out of a desire for survival. Their divergence, however, arises in the fact that where conscious realism views this illusion as the byproduct of evolution and a satisfactory state, the Advaita view it as shoddy. To understand the Advaita point of view, it must be taken into consideration that the belief in transmigration is a key tenet of their faith. Hence, life is seen as a continuous cycle of rebirth and death, or moksha. From this consequence, it was believed an escape route was provided, but that required being free from avidya, or ignorance. This ignorance arose from the individual's quest for survival, clinging on to Maya, believing it to be the real thing. For the Advaita, there is therefore a true reality, which is called Brahman, and man's destiny is to be free from the shackles of Maya to reunite with Brahman. And only when man forsook his desire for survival and existence could he achieve this freedom and be united with the true reality, Brahman. So, conscious realism does imply a cessation of consciousness at the time of death, while the Advaita advocate that with the freedom from Maya, consciousness transcends into the greater and true reality. Whereas conscious realism views the illusion of the world in a physical sense, in Hinduism it's regarded in an absolute or eternal sense. Worthy of note, however, is the subtle agreement between the parties on that which is not responsible for Maya, or illusion. Donald Hoffman believes that the brain and its neurons possess no causal effect, and that reality, whatever that is the real source of cause and effect in the world. For the Advaita, Maya is brought about by a play of the consciousness of God. Hence, the agreement that physical matter, or the brain, is not responsible for our perception of reality. Hoffman denies the existence of any form of objectivity in space, time, and matter. For him, consciousness is the basis for reality. Hoffman is quite confident that if his hypothesis were proven correct, it could further lead to the development of answers to the mind-boggling questions on the mind-body problem, the conflict between quantum mechanics and general relativity, and the theory of everything. Hoffman's hypothesis surely has its detractors. The idea of the brain and neurons possessing no causal effect, hence not being responsible for our consciousness, makes one ponder as to the reality of the body. Hoffman's hypothesis probably finds its main, not strongest opponent in materialism. For starters, materialism certainly believes that every aspect of human existence is bound to or dependent on physical processes or the physical laws of nature. For the materialist, the brain and its neurons are responsible for the consciousness of individuals. They further believe that the reality of objects can be determined by sense experience, i.e., if an object comes in contact with any of my related senses, it therefore has to exist. The Advaita and materialist school of thought are non-dualist, but where Advaita believe in the existence of the body and mind as distinct but inseparable, the materialist denies the existence of any such concepts that do not find their expression in matter. Another critique of Hoffman's theory is evolution by natural selection, as expressed in the example of mimicry. Take for instance, the ladybug is known to play dead while doing what is termed reflex bleeding. The resulting bad smell and the abhorrent countenance of death is an act to ward off predators. Over the centuries, certain cockroaches, beetles, and spiders have evolved into adapting the exact color of the ladybug. So while they might not engender all the properties exclusive to the ladybug, the striking semblance tends to ward off predators who have experienced unpleasant circumstances with the ladybug. We also have the case of non-venomous snakes adapting the colorings of venomous ones. The proponents of this theory simply state that mimicry should not be plausible if there does not exist a genuine objective reality. What's interesting is how certain ideas tend to permeate across certain ideologies regardless of the field of study and the notable approaches applied. As we've seen, a strong semblance exists between Hoffman's theory on the nature of the physical world and the Maya doctrine of the Hindu philosophy. Though, of course, each party disagrees as to the benefits of these illusions on mankind. And where Hoffman gives our consciousness credit for these illusions backed by an evolutionary model for survival, the Maya doctrine views these illusions as a play of the supreme consciousness of God. Another issue worthy of note was, as pointed out, the subtle agreement that the brain and its neurons play no causal effect in the role of consciousness. We then notice that there are connections between different ideas of varied fields, and however minute the agreements between them may be, there's the sense that certain ideas are not really subjective and cut across the board more often than we might think. Perhaps this understanding that no school of thought, no matter how ancient or modern, is uniquely special or distant from the rest, but is instead interconnected and could aid us in advancing solutions toward the ultimate questions on the nature and objectivity of reality.